Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are really excited tonight because we have our very special panel that is going to talk about the Black American Library Card and the celebration and the history behind it. Um, we have our representatives from Community Board 3. We have Brooklyn Public Library representatives. We have the artist here, Jandy Williams. So we're really excited. My name is Nicole Bryan. I am the branch manager here at Brooklyn Public Library at the Macon branch. And the Black American Library Card came about from an idea through Community Board 3, the Parks, Arts, and Culture Committee. And Wendy Williams thought of the idea and the history behind it. And so she's going to speak a little later on about it. So tonight with us, we have Wendy Robinson, who's the brainchild behind this. A member of Community Board 3. We have TJ Wilson, who's a member of Community Board 3 and the co-chair of the Parks, Arts, and Culture Committee of CB3. Sheena Miller, who is our associate for the African American Heritage Center. And we have Jandy Williams, who's the artist for the new Black American Library Card. So we wanted to open up a discussion tonight to give everyone who will log in, join, see this video later on, maybe not this evening live, but pre-recorded, just to give you some ideas or insights behind this card, the inspiration, and how you too can be an advocate. So first up, we're going to have TJ Wilson speak a little bit more about the advocacy of a community board member. So I'm going to remove my spotlight and spotlight TJ. So TJ, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Nicole Ryan. I am the vice chair of the Parks, Arts, and Culture Committee for Community Board 3 in Brooklyn. And one of the great things I feel that's special about our community board is the strong support that we have from the executive board and our elected officials to really work within the community with our partners, the folks that service us in the community, agencies, because that's what we as neighbors and community members need to remember, that these agencies are here to serve us, and that there's nothing wrong with bringing an idea or an issue of giving feedback. And that's one of the things that I enjoy, and I encourage folks that participate with us on a membership level and becoming community members, and definitely from our committee. Our committee is very strong in advocates for culture, for parks and green spaces. And that's the I think that I don't know that if that's unique to our community board as much as it's just who we are in Bedford-Stuyvesant. We, instead of complaining about how can we solve the problem and how can we enrich our lives in the community. And so we really want and encourage, and that's what I felt, and the chairperson of our committee, Marion Little, felt strongly about our peer, Wendy Robinson, who's on not only is she on the community board, but she's a part of our committee. She had this fantastic idea. We were excited about it, and then COVID hit, and we were kind of like not there. She'd come to us earlier, but it just never happened earlier. And then, like I said, COVID hit, and the protests over the summer of 2020 we felt that this moment was the right moment, and we wanted to build a strong, to strengthen her idea and encourage her, and really be bold and not be afraid to take it to the library. And the library has always been a great partner in our community. And but Wendy was really pivotal, and I want to say the committee too, just embracing and saying, let's go with this, let's do this, and not to be afraid. And that's the thing about community, activism in general. It comes in all kinds of forms. This is an activist moment. This was an activist moment, and for Black Americans, and in the community. And it's not to exclude anyone. It's just to shine a light, and on the rich history that is part of who we are in this community. Just a part. There's so many other parts, but we're just saying, let's shine a light on that. And we really, really, really wanted to engage the young people. That I was so happy that we were in, because this is where it starts. I was engaged as a young person in activism through my parents. And so it started at it started in my youth, and it started through reading. And I want to say that was the same for Wendy also. So this was like it was the right moment. It was the right tool. The library was the right place and tool for it to express this activist moment for us. So engaging in activism and community volunteer, it comes in all shapes and forms. We are in our community, on our community board, we have several committees that stretch from infrastructure, which is sanitation department, of transportation, all the way to landmarking, all the way to seniors, all the way to the post office. These are it's not just, it's not only just protesting, it's not only just sitting and making decisions that influence your life. It's a combination of all of those things. And it can come, again, I must repeat, it can come in so many different forms. And this particular activism came in the form of a library card. It's encouraging to see, it's encouraging not only to encourage our youth to get involved, but for them to see themselves in the everyday episodes in our lives. When you go to the library card and get a library card, that's an episode in our life. That's like a big episode for many of us. And what a wonderful thing to pick up the card and to see someone that looks like you, or looks like your sister, or looks like how your mother looked when she was little. So I think that this was a great expression of community activism, advocacy, participation, and cultural representation, all boiled into one.
Thank you, TJ. That was amazing. I think that was really great. And it's really important to have wonderful community members, people who are really vested in the library and who wants to give back, not just pulling up, but actually looking back and pulling our young people up. And it was amazing, amazing, amazing. So next up, I'm going to have Wendy Robinson speak a little bit about her idea, how it came about, the why behind why she thought it was really important. So welcome, Wendy.
Hi, everyone. Again, I'm Wendy Robinson, not Williams, Wendy Robinson.
I'm sorry.
No problem. Not the first time. I'm sure it won't be the last, but I'm a community board member, and the Parks, Arts, and Culture Committee is my primary committee because I love all things art.
Oh, she's muted.
You're muted, Wendy.
How much, was I muted the whole time or?
No, you can just start over, my dear.
All right, so Wendy, I'm Wendy Robinson, community board member. It was during the first or second committee meeting as a board member that I came up with this idea. Ms. Isaacs from the Macon branch at the time attended the meeting to give updates on the Bed-Stuy branches. In that update, it was shared that the renovations for the African American Heritage Center was completed. And I was like, okay, that's my main branch. That's my local branch. That's where I go for get my library books. Sometimes when I was unemployed, I was in there using their resources. And all this time, I didn't know that room was dedicated for the study and research of African American history. So I thought if I was someone who was not aware, I'm pretty sure other people weren't aware. So PR is my background. So my wheels started to churn. How can we highlight this space? And Ms. Isaac and TJ had mentioned a program where they had a call for artists previously to me, that predated me being on the board. So I thought maybe if we got artists in the community, do a call to artists again, to invite them to design the card and make it a contest. So whoever had the best design, which we know who it is in this case, you'll speak to her later, would that design would be the face of the library card and designed specifically to enhance the African American Heritage Room, so people would know about it, be encouraged to get their children to participate, to visit, to use the space, and that was the impetus of this, the Black American Library Card.
Thank you. I'm just going to use my calendar. Thank you so much, Wendy Robinson. I apologize. I'm so sorry. I do. Once Wendy and TJ brought it to Brooklyn Public Library, we loved the idea so much. As Wendy said, Lamine Isaac, the former branch manager, was there during the time when they had another artist in residence program a few years ago. When the idea was brought to me as the current branch manager, I loved it. I was like doing cartwheels. I thought the idea was amazing. And it's really important that we look to as an organization, our community board and our community members, to have community-driven programs that are relevant, important, and important to them. We're here to provide a service to our public. So it's really important that we listen, and we're very attuned. You know, we tune in to hear what they're telling us. We listen to what they're saying, and we're understanding our part in the community, deficits we may see, and how we can help support, and making sure that it makes sense for the organization as a whole, right? Because it's amazing ideas, but it just has to align with our mission and vision as an organization and our goals and where we're going in our next steps. So when Wendy and TJ brought the idea to us, we thought the idea was amazing. And it was supposed to be Macon specific for the Macon branch. But when we brought it to our administration, they loved it. And they said, we have to make this a borough-wide initiative. And the idea sparked everyone just started going forward with it. And within 9 months, here we are. And we are really excited about it. We did a call for artists from January 4th to January 31st. We had over 400 submissions, and we had the really, really hard task. I'm happy that I wasn't on the selection committee or the judging panel, because they definitely had a difficult time going through the artwork and the people and reading the artist statements and making sure that the artists really had a deep connection to Brooklyn, really had a ear to what we wanted to do and what the vision of the new Black American Library card would be. And out of 400 submissions, 199, I believe, went to the selection committee, and they narrowed it down to 12. The very hard task of doing that, narrowing it down to 12. And out of those 12 finalists, we have our amazing, amazing, amazing winner, Jayende Williams, with us. And I just wanted her to speak. Come on, and have our community and everyone hear a little bit about her process and how she felt about it, her inspiration behind the design, why she picked what she picked. So I'm really excited. So I am going to remove my spotlight, and we're going to spotlight Jandy. So Jandy, welcome, welcome, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful. I'm always so grateful for this entire experience.
We are so happy to have you.
Thank you.
Really happy to have you. So you can talk a little bit about your inspiration and the why you actually decided to join and submit artwork.
So my inspiration was definitely it was definitely a challenge figuring out what to put on the card, because I wanted to show like Black American culture, New York, specifically Brooklyn. So I was really trying to find that one center image that somebody can look at and be like, hey, I know this is New York City, it's Brooklyn, it's American, it's Black culture. So for me, I wasn't even thinking about my own like relatable material to the artwork that I thought of. It was just like what people would see and connect to automatically. So it was just a designer's mindset of what fits, just what works with people, what they see. It wasn't so much of me, it was just how people would see it, how they can connect to it. But my inspiration for example, the young girl on the card, which is the central idea of the card, it was definitely me, because I always loved reading and writing growing up. So with that idea, it can connect with the library and younger people continuing to read and write. But then the other ideas started flowing, and that's how it all just connected.
Amazing. So thank you. We're really excited to have you. And thank you to everyone. Wendy, TJ, I really appreciate you coming on. And Sheena is our associate for the Macon Heritage Center. And I just wanted her to kind of start the Q&A of any questions. We have a couple of people in the room. We're really excited. Thank you all for joining us again. So any questions for the panel? And we're going to spend some time for the audience if they have any questions. So Sheena, I will hand it over to you.
All right, so good evening, everyone. Really grateful to be here. If you haven't received your card, I hope you go get it one immediately because they are gorgeous. And so, artist Nehemiah, I'm so glad to get to ask you a couple of questions, and I have some questions for others as well. But I think, first off, I'm sure people want to hear more about you. So I wonder, could you tell us just a little bit about your family's history, your experience growing up? Where did you grow up? What schools did you go to?
Sure. So my family was particularly uh, blossomed in Brooklyn. My mother was from Nostrand, and her grandparents owned several businesses in Brooklyn. And so I remember growing up, my mother would always tell me stories of, her grandparents, her family, just so much Black excellence and entrepreneurship. But it all really started in Brooklyn. And although my mother eventually moved to North Carolina, where also her life took place in as well, my mother is a full-on Brooklynite. And if you need the map to Brooklyn, that is my mother there. But when I was born, my mother, she was in Chelsea, downtown Manhattan. And so all the schools that I went to, academic support was always downtown Manhattan. But for most of my art experience and community outreach, it was always in Brooklyn. I was a part of the Fulton Art show done by Miss Keys. And that was definitely a great experience because it was automatic, like a welcoming sense of energy, and it felt like you were like in the community of people that you knew spiritually. It just felt like such a relaxing type of connection. But yeah, so most of my experience of when it came to the arts was Brooklyn. But yes.
Thank you. So I loved what you said. I don't know if I'll get the phrase right, but like your mom is a map of Brooklyn. I just love the
Yes.
visual concept of that. Okay, so
Yes.
if you, I don't know, some little kid, we're in the audience right now from Oklahoma or something, and doesn't know the first thing about Brooklyn, but was curious, what would you tell that kid? Like, what makes Brooklyn Brooklyn in your eyes?
The diversity. The diversity is definitely what makes Brooklyn. You can taste so many different foods, and like it's like Brooklyn, and it's like Queens, and and everything else is third place in New York City. But Brooklyn is definitely the highlight of New York City. I mean, when you look at film and television, anytime they show New York City, they show Times Square or it's somewhere in Brooklyn, especially around the Brooklyn Bridge. But if you want an experience of feeling like you can be yourself, your authentic self, Brooklyn is the place to be. So, and you find some good food to taste too. So
Totally. I agree with that all the way. I'm forever eating. What are some of your favorite things to eat in Brooklyn?
Spanish food. Yes, definitely Spanish food.
Yum. Okay, so I think it's a huge honor. Like, it's always great to have our artwork and our achievements received, but I think, like, I keep trying to imagine what it would be like to be in your shoes, to create something beautiful and not only know it's beautiful myself, but have this major public library system recognize it. And so I want to kind of hear more about, where were you when you found out that your design had been selected, and just what does it feel like to know there's going to be millions, or at least probably thousands and thousands, some big number of people running around with your artwork in their pocket and in their wallet. It's like, just how does that feel?
I guess it's such an underwhelming feeling. Like it almost feels surreal. Because even with seeing myself on the news and online and other people's pages, it still feels like, oh, okay, I'm out there. But I think the real connection is when you meet people face to face and they're like, hey, I love your artwork because I'm an artist and I'm also pursuing this, and that, and I want to do this just like you, or you get me motivated, or you make me feel encouraged. I think definitely the reminder that, whoa, this is real because I'm actually connecting with people. And it definitely doesn't feel like it's like actually there, because especially in a Generation Z, you know, world of technology, it always feels so disconnected. So to have people of different ages, different backgrounds, different cultures come up and be like, I feel encouraged that you did it, so now I feel like I can do it, you know. And the people that I connected with and networked with after this win, I was just like, oh my goodness, you know, I'm so grateful. You know, and I've always grown up, you know, conscious in my culture and conscious, you know, with as a woman, as a Black woman, and to express that in my art and for it to be celebrated, and to have younger Black girls come up and be like, oh, I loved your work because I can see myself in it. It was automatic, like, okay, I did something good, you know. No one else could say anything because these two kids, several kids, when they came to get the, you know, cards or poster signs, like, oh wow, I love this, it's so awesome. Like that right there is what gets me deeply. But when I first heard about me being chosen, it was Mr. Feeney and Miss Isaac. Shout out to them because they were just so welcoming and friendly and just awesome. Like every Brooklyn night, and they called me up. You know, your iPhone, it says like business, like unknown business, you know, they don't tell you if it's spam, they just name it for you so you think it's somebody you know. And I was in my living room, me and my mom watching Law and Order, and they called and they were like, oh, is this Janae Williams? And I was like, yes. They were like, oh, your submission to the Brooklyn Library card. And I knew that I was going to get an email, or yeah, I knew I was going to get an email from them. So I forgot that I gave them my phone number for them to reach out to once if I was chosen. Like I was like, oh, if, I don't know. But I was like, they said Brooklyn Library card, mom. And I turned to her and I was like, Mom, the Brooklyn Library, they called. And my mom was like, oh my goodness. And she was so excited. And I was talking over them on the phone because I was so happy. And you know, this was like a contest my cousins found on social media online, you know, and they were like, hey, you know, they go to their family member who's the artist, and they're like, you know, you should do this. And I'm like, oh, I never did art contest. So, you know, and I did it. And then when I got the call and they said what they were saying, they basically prepared me for those steps and you know, any events around it, and, you know, don't tell anyone yet. And I was like, okay, you know, just my mom, you know. But it was just like I remember that day I was extremely hot. I had the air conditioner on, and once they called, I got hot back again. So there's no point in having an air conditioner on. But yeah, it was definitely unforgettable. Something I'm going to tell to my kids of the future and their kids, and I'll be like, yeah, me and your great grandmother were watching this show called Law, and I'm like, what's that show? And I'm like, yeah, and library card. And they're like, oh, library cards don't exist. We have floating cards, you know, something. But yeah, it's definitely a memory. So, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. I have 2 follow-up questions. First,
Sure.
I need to know, did you finish that episode of Law and Order? Like, did you just go back to what you were doing?
It's not, to be honest, my mom's a Brooklynite and a Law and Order. She's probably one of the actors on the show. She's the expert of the show. But she got me into it when I was, you know, it was something, one of those shows your parents watch and you start just sitting in the living room. You're like, oh, what's this? And then you watch it and then you're like, oh, this is good. And, you know, I don't know what's happening. My parent watches, I'm gonna watch it. And, you know, she knows all the characters, the story. She's like, oh, you remember this episode? I'm like, no, I don't. No, I know SpongeBob, but I don't know. But that's our family thing, you know, is Law and Order, you know, or like Jeopardy or, you know, stuff like that. But I don't remember the episode. But I asked my mom. She might know.
That's hilarious. And then, okay, so growing up, I used to get so annoyed with my cousins. Like they were just the worst people to play with, eating all my food. And so it made me really happy to hear that your cousins helped you out. Like they found this opportunity and they nudged you to apply. So I wonder, are you gonna take them to lunch or make them some customized artwork or anything?
That's definitely an idea. That's definitely, I've always done that when I was even like in elementary school, like kids, like even just kid classmates that were like, oh, I like your art, or or something like that, or they would like, like give me some of their snacks, or they would like draw my character. Oh, I drew, I'll be like, oh, I'll draw this for you. Like I've always been the type to give back, and especially with family, of course. So Tamika, Sky, James, who are all amazing, intelligent people, and they all got their own thing going on too. They got their own little businesses and art, so they're also, big, strong black and black and queens and kings who are doing their own kingdom. So I can definitely do artwork for them. I probably call them and be like, hey, I got this idea from the interview. Do you want some artwork? So yeah.
Cool. So okay, earlier you were talking a little bit about the design and how kind of it centers that girl, and that came out of your experience, your story, and your love for books. And I wonder if you could talk a little bit about how you envisioned the card and made decisions about who else to place in that scene.
So my original idea was based on I don't know the artist's name, but he was a popular artist, a popular Black artist in the 70s, where his entire aesthetic was drawing like really exaggerated Black figures. We have a picture of it in my house, and I don't even know the artist. That is terrible. I'm a bad example, but I was trying to create that pattern of, just Black silhouettes, and they're not dancing, but they're like reading books. So the central core was, in my mind, was them reading. And eventually when my ideas came up with, okay, it should show New York, Brooklyn, American, then I was like, okay, well, I can still include the reading, but who, like, it needs to be a specific person. And so I thought of, everyone sitting on the train, they had the same color book, but who would be like the one person with like the important book. And I was like, okay, well, I'll draw, like a historical figure. I'm like, well, no, they should kind of represent everyone. They should kind of like represent Ernie Burns. Yes, that is the artist who creates the exaggerated silhouettes. Thank you, Miss TJ. Thank you so much. And so I thought, well, I want the person reading to be a person that people can automatically relate to or notice. I'm like, okay, well, let it be a child, and they're obviously going to be Black. But then I was like, well, why don't you just be me and other Black girls? It was just like an automatic, because artists, we think too hard, and we don't always think like, put yourself in the artwork, because in the art industry and, in storytelling, it's always considered, if you put yourself in your story, it's automatically lazy, and that's not true at all. I think a lot of people forget that people can relate to you, but we just assume they can't because, oh, you are just you and no one else can see that. Like, no, there's a lot of people that can't connect to you. You just have to be open-minded to putting yourself out there. You just got to take that fearful step, so I drew the young Black girl, and I made sure to give her a bun so people can see she was like a girl with like the sunflower, and her backpack had the sticker of Believe, so it can show that we have this young Black girl that's ambitious. She wants to learn, she wants to get out and go. She's an outsider, she's an extroverted person, because she's going somewhere. And so when I was at one of the signing events, and one of the young Black girls were like, she looks like me, and this person looks like my sister and my auntie, that I was like, okay, I did the good thing, because everyone can see themselves in her, because she's supposed to represent not only her gender and her race, but also that she's the next generation that feels encouraged to, engage with literature, engage with themselves, because that's what we need more.
I love that. And I imagine like it felt pretty amazing for that little girl to look at that card and see herself. That's really special. How long did it take you to create the design? What materials did you use? Or could you walk us through the process of creation?
It took me about, so this was in February, because I just recently graduated from BMCC, and so I had a lot of, oh, thank you. I had a lot of like free time because, you know, COVID, schools weren't taking in transfer students yet. So I was kind of at home and I was still working. So when I was doing this contest, you know, I had a lot of free time. So I was in good hands. My mom was, shout out to my mom, because she was like, did you eat? Did you drink? Are you breathing? My dogs are coming and be like, do you want to throw this toy? I'm like, no, I see you. But it took a week to just draw, just drawing the giraffe. Well, I'll say first off, it took me about like a day to first draw the Ernie Barnes concept I had. It took like one day, then I was like, I'm gonna put this to the side. And then automatically, because I think this was 2 weeks before the submission date. So I've always been one of those people as I got older to work under pressure, especially as an artist. I was one of those people that my ideas come at the last minute, you know, and I can't stand it, but it just happens. And after my concept, then I had the thing with the train and the girl. So that took me about a week to just draft it on Photoshop. I was still like, I would say intermediate advanced in Photoshop. I really just got like more advanced with Photoshop when I was at BMCC by my professor Culkin. She was like my entire mentor when it came to learning Adobe programs. And so this was like the 3rd year of me doing Photoshop. And so I drew, you know, with the brushes I knew and how to stroke my paintbrush and all that type of stuff. And so I felt a little confident, but I think my challenge was the color palette. I've never been a good colorist. I've always just been like good at the sketching and the inking. But once I inked the picture of everyone sitting on a train and the drummer, and this was like a Thursday at the end of that week, I was like, what's gonna be the color palette? Because it has to be colors that represents Black existence. So I'm like, it needs to represent some like a good shade, like good shades. And so I was like, okay. And I was thinking, you know, about my mom. So my mom, she wears good, you know, colors with her outfit, and her favorite color is orange. Hopefully I'm right. Okay, my mom's in the other room. She said yes, great. So I was like, orange, yellow, red, brown, yellow, blue. That represents the sun. The yellow is the sun. The red is for the blood of the people. The orange, you know, orange and red both represents, you know, the vibrant energy of a tribe, you know. And yellow is all can also be gold, you know, for the wealth. The blue is the water. So, and I knew it was common colors in a lot of African culture. So I was like, I'm gonna stick with this. And so I was like, okay, the books are gonna be red, you know, yellow floor. That took me a little time to figure out where the colors were gonna go, but eventually worked well. And I submitted it within a week. So it was really fast. It was really fast. I was surprised. But yeah, and I sent it out. Yeah.
Wow, I'm so glad. Like, that's incredible. I feel like if you told me that design took you a year to make, I would have believed it. So that you did it in almost no amount of time. And I mean, of course you did. The call wasn't out that long, but
right.
That's just so impressive and inspiring.
Thank you. Thank you.
And especially like I relate to you because I wait to the last minute for everything too. And so to know that there can be a success story for procrastinators, I bet other people in the audience have some hope now too.
Right.
How did you learn how to sketch and draw? And were you encouraged to make art while you were growing up?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like I'm one of those artists where like an Andy Warhol or Jackson Pollock, like I was one of those artists that like, and I feel like I still am. I kind of like my art is like my existence. It's like everything I do. And I came out the womb with like a sketchbook and a pencil. It's like I was just doing it before it was even a thing. So my mom always had me in art programs. I was always a self-taught kid, because I just came out like that because my grandmother and my father were both cartoonists. They were both technically cartoonists, and they were illustrators. So for me, I already had it in my family at a close range in the line. And so I was always the kid drawing on the folders, drawing on my homework. My mom would be like, "Stop drawing on the folders I just got you," or drawing fan art. I'm like, "Mom, look at this character I drew for the 10th millionth time. You can put on your refrigerator," and you're like, "It's the same thing, but I love you because you're my kid." I was just like, my thing was always art. I was watching cartoons. I had the comic books. I was always drawing characters and stories in my head. And my first characters I created, the first ever idea I had, it was two sisters, and their name was Strawberry and Christy, and they would always go through like these crazy adventures, and they were like stick figures, like, and their hair was like two lines, and I would draw it on blank pieces of paper, my mom's printing paper, and I would staple it like actual pages. And this was like from elementary to middle school. Middle school, then I created an actual comic in a comic book club I had in my middle school. I never submitted it, so it was never in the actual comic book like preview pages they had like for all the students. But I have it on my computer, so I can look at it, and that I fully colored it. It was like 10 pages. I had a lot of energy to just draw, and then when I got older, I'm like, whoa, like I need to go outside. I need to drink some water. I need to do other things because I've been drawing forever, but it's something that I'm never going to let go. It's something I'm always going to keep doing. I think for me, that my first stage of art was just enjoying it. And then the second part, especially around high school, it was like, well, what do you want your art? What do you want your audience for your art to be, because I was hitting different communities. I was hitting the Black community, the Hispanic community, the Asian community. I was really having a range of people, but I was really trying to figure out why I was drawing and what I was doing it for, instead of me just liking to do it. And as I got older, I was already older, but after I graduated high school and into college, and especially with COVID, that was an impact for all people, and especially with artists, and being in the house, that could be a good and a bad thing. Your mental health, you feel closed in, and most of us don't even go outside. So eventually it was like, oh, it's no big deal, but now it's like, I feel now that I go out, back out like we all do, then it's like you really feel like, I want my artwork to represent the new world, the new society, something that can make people motivated, and it could still be connected to all different cultures, but it can make people feel like they can do something. So it's like, as you grow as an artist, you want your artwork to kind of manifest into its own thing outside of yourself. I think that's the whole purpose of art, is that you want it to disconnect from you and be able to exist on its own. And that could be a business thing, it could be a abstract concept, but just you want it to be its own thing, so people can feel like, oh wow, like I can take this and I can do my own thing. So I've always just been drawing. I was in the League of Students Arts. I was at the Fulton Art Show. I went to the music school. I was always in art clubs. This is me, the artist.
I love it. I love too what you said just about starting with something, like coming out the womb with your pen, with your sketchbook, whatever, and starting with
just
something.
drawing. I mean, just
drawing,
creating. Because I was like, because my lens was always reading. My mom always had me reading. Eventually, when I was watching more and more TV, and especially noticing race, I felt like, well, where is me? And of course, throughout those stages when I was drawing, you know, what I enjoyed. As I got older, I went back to my younger self, was like, well, let me draw that's going to represent other people on TV. And that's what made me kind of go into the whole animation aspect and cartooning and do that and have it show, you know, people of color and, you know, and Black people as a whole. So, you know, once again, your art manifesting in yourself and you kind of, you know, self-reflect. But yeah.
Yeah, I love that. So it starts with you and like what you want to do, and then you have that question of why am I doing this? And then it becomes something that's about something so much bigger than you are. Yeah, that I think
Yes.
that like sums it all up. And I think you're, you know, a living example of the reach and significance of art. And you've already impacted a lot of people in our community, and that's just going to continue. So I think we're going to all be really excited to watch what happens with your animation and what else you do. Not to
Yes,
put the
I'm
pressure
definitely
on
excited.
you, but yeah, we can't
No,
wait.
no pressure. No pressure. No
We
pressure.
are-
I think with the card and other stuff I have, I'm just trying to take my time. I always feel like I rush things in my head, like this is gonna happen first, and then this is gonna happen second, and this is what's gonna happen. This is gonna happen third. Like I have everything planned out in my head, and I got that from my mom and my dad. And shout out to both of them because I got that from both of them. I'm just like, everything is gonna happen just like this. And then the next day, I'm like, oh, but you know, I want to do this, you know? So it's like, you got to be patient with yourself. You got to just let things be what it's going to be, because I didn't know I was going to win, you know, be the winner out of 400 people and be called up. I was like, oh my God. And I had to change my plans around that, of course, because I had to and I wanted to. But with this, I networked and I connected with people, and that even helped me with my own work. So it's like, I try to take everything one step at a time, and I'm just grateful to just see another day of everything. So
we are grateful for you. Thank you so much for these answers and for this inspiration and just
no
for the
problem.
beauty you've brought into the world. Like, thank you.
Oh, thank you.
So
Thank
I
you so
think,
much.
yeah, thank you. I think what I'll do is I'm gonna also pin Wendy. I don't know.
Who do you
if
want to
that-
pin? Wendy? I can pin her.
Yes. Okay.
I have her for you.
I'll let you take care of that. Yeah. My next question
Yeah, I got
is
you.
for Wendy, and then after that. Okay. So Wendy, earlier we got to hear from you and you know, like your story, how this idea came to you. I wonder, I mean, there's a few things I wonder about, but I wonder if you could talk just a bit about your involvement with CB3 in the community and how that started.
It started, I have a neighbor, I'm on the second block of Decatur, she's on the first block, and we would attend the community board meetings as community residents. And a couple of times she suggested I join the board. And this was probably maybe 5-6 years ago. And I was always under the impression that you had to be a homeowner or, you know, something to that effect. I don't know why I thought that, but that was my thought. And I was probably just giving myself excuses not to apply. But she said it enough to the point where I said, well, you know, I'm attending the meetings anyway as a community member. Why don't I just apply? So I applied, I think it was 2019, and I was appointed. So I became a community board member in 2019, and I was reappointed for this next term coming in September. I enjoy being on the board because it gives me opportunity to see exactly what's going on in the community, who the players are in the community, and to have a voice in the community. So as I mentioned before, the Parks, Arts, and Culture Committee is my primary committee, but I'm also on the Landmarks and Preservation Committee as well as the Economic and Development Committee. And this go around this next term, I'll probably participate in other committees as well, like budget, TJ. I'll be involved more on that aspect, something I want to learn more about and, have some input in that as well if I can.
Thank you. I know earlier too, when you were just talking about your story and this coming to life and everything, one big takeaway I took was that, the library has been a really pivotal part of your experience. And it sounds like it's had a lot of resources that you've made great use of. And so I wonder if you could talk about, just on a personal level, what libraries mean to you and what you think they mean to our community. And even like, I'm loving the brick in the background, and I think it says liberation. And so I wonder too, like liberation and library, they start with that same prefix or whatever. And what do you think about that? Where do they connect?
Actually, I went to South Africa 4 years ago, and this is one of the bricks that is on the walls of Nelson Mandela and Winnie Mandela's home before he was incarcerated. But so there's some others, but this happened to be my favorite one, liberation. Since I was a kid, my mother went to college after I was born. She was I guess what they call non-traditional student. So when she would go to the libraries, of course, she would take me with her. So from, I don't know, as early as I can remember, I was in either on a college campus library or the public library. And I'm a native of Springfield, Mass, where the library system there, the main library it's called the Quadrangle. So it has the main library, very similar to the Brooklyn Public Library Central Branch. It's like the largest branch in Springfield, in the city of Springfield. And then it has museums that make up the rest of it. So they call it Quadrangle because it's, 4 sides. So I was either at the library or in one of the museums. But as a child, I was in book reading contests to keep me busy. It was, my mother, after a while, my mother ended up being a single mother. So to keep me busy, she was sticking me in dance classes or in the library. Those are like the places I could go on my own, the dance class or to the library. So that just stayed with me. Every place I've gone, I've gotten. I lived in North Carolina. I had a library card there, used their services when I was in Delaware, did the same in addition to my college campus library. So when I moved to New York, I have a library card for Brooklyn library system as well as New York City library system. So I utilize all their services, whether it's just personal use for picking up books that I want to read. There's some that you all need to add, but add to the system when I can't find them when I go to search. And like I said, mentioned earlier, when I was unemployed, I would go to the library to use the computer, see if there's any postings there. So the library has just always been, it's another resource, another part of me. Like I don't, it's, the library card is like my driver's license. I need both. So, and the liberation part of it, how to tie it in, you use their services to help you better yourself, whether that is using a computer to look for a job or to look for a book. All of it is part of freeing your mind, your soul, your body, and just, being you and bettering yourself.
I love that. I know I probably shouldn't ask this, but since you have experience with libraries in North Carolina, Delaware, these different colleges, in YPL, I know you said there's some books we need to add to our collection, and we will listen to you. But where does is Brooklyn Public Library better than any of those other systems? Or would you say they're just equal? We won't cry.
I must say, I like Brooklyn and New York Public. Out of all the places I've been, I like Brooklyn. Brooklyn, of course, you know, is Brooklyn. I love Brooklyn, so I'll put that number one. You know, I always say if there's a such thing as a past life, I think I was born and bred in Brooklyn, even though this life, my birth certificate says I was born in Springfield, Mass. But and then the next is New York, and I think because of the size and the resources that they have, they just end up having more than the other libraries. Now, Springfield, I don't want to, you know, slight where I'm from. So they're probably like a tie with New York, but they're smaller. It's not a large city. But they have the quadrangle, so that gives it a, you know, I could just walk out the door and there's a museum, then there's another museum over here, instead of taking the train and traveling few stops away. So I give them a close second or third with New York.
Okay, I can respect those answers. We didn't want to have to remove you from the Zoom for saying the wrong thing. I love that. I'm also unrelated, but I'm just curious because you said your mom sent you either to the library or to the dance. So what kind of dance were you doing? Or do you do?
Well, then I was part of the Frank Hatchett Performing Arts School that was in Springfield, Mass. But Frank Hatchett was very well known in that industry. I forget his name, but he was in, I think his name was Leroy something. He played in Fame. He taught under Frank Hatchett. So, but it was just modern dance. And I wanted to do tap dance, but you know, for reasons I won't discuss here, I couldn't do tap dance. But that is one of my other favorite forms of dance. But it was modern dance that I participated in.
Cool. Well, I loved getting to hear this, just a little bit more about your experience. And I'm glad that given how well versed you are in libraries, you enjoy our system. And later I will have a question about books and stuff. So I will be sure to ask you what are some things you think we should add to the collection. But before that, I have some questions for TJ, if we could spotlight her. And thank you, Wendy. I never thought about Springfield. Hey, TJ. Okay.
Hey.
So I noticed when TJ first signed on today, I was looking at that background and I was thinking, I'm jealous. I want my Zoom background to look like that. And then TJ, you said that's your work, right?
Yes, I'm an artist. Yeah, so that is my work, and I love the only thing I don't do pottery or ceramics, anything, or sculpting, but I do all the paint, oil, acrylic, gouache. I love watercolor, which this is watercolor. And my favorite, of course, my favorite thing is drawing. I draw all the time. I'm drawing now. I draw all the time. So I'm very connected to Ms. Williams in that sense, because I came out drawing. My dad was drew cartoons for us as kids, did us a little Sunday. We would do that ritual of reading the Sunday papers, reading Sunday comics, doing the crossword, the jumble, with my dad and my mom, and coloring. That was a big thing. I know you didn't ask me all that, but I thought I would share that anyway.
Yeah. What was one of your favorite, or is one of your favorite comics?
Let's understand. Well, now you mean now, or you mean back then? Because I'm still a comic person.
Mm-hmm.
When I was growing up, I loved. My father hated it, but I liked Charlie Brown. I loved Charlie Brown. Okay, I so much loved Charlie Brown. And it was Snoopy that made me fall in love. Okay, and to this day, my nephew's son will send for my birthday and for Christmas will give me something with Snoopy on it because that's my cool Jack. I love me some Snoopy. Um, and but growing the comic for comics, my dad would buy me and my sister Betty and Veronica and Archie comic books, and then he would redraw them or we would color them so
Oh,
they
cool.
so they could look like us. We didn't. There was not, there was like maybe one black character or two black characters, the coach and his son, and and then Josie and the Pussycats, right? So we would, he would draw because my dad was such a great artist, and he would draw for us. I mean, just draw, and so that's what I grew up with. But I didn't think I was the artist that I became. But that was my, but we did, and we colored, and that's one thing that we did a lot as a family. Both my dad and my mom, me and my sister, we would color crayons. We had 64, 124 box sets of crayons. I mean, crayons did not last in my house because we were coloring as a family, and also we loved the library. That was a family event. When I went to get my library card, and I took out a book and didn't bring it back for almost a year. My father told me I was getting arrested by the library police. But so that's so all of this comes everything when I listen to her and I listen to Wendy and I'm so connected to you guys because I feel that Ms. Isaacs was on and because I frequented before I became a board member, I was at the Macon Street Library, especially in the summertime, because I worked from home. So I wouldn't use my air conditioner at home. I'd go use the one at Macon Library, that kind of thing. And but I love books, and I want to, and I know that's like you said it perfectly, Wendy, about freeing your mind, your soul, and I'm an avid reader. I read constantly to this day. And I did it as a child too. And I was fascinated with dictionaries. So I would go to the Central Library down on, because we lived down the street in Flatbush. So I would go to the Grand Army Plaza and go straight to the dictionary because I loved that dictionary to the point where my dad bought us a huge dictionary because I fell in love with dictionaries. And so, and I grew up in that library. And so when I came here, and there was one right down the street from me, I about lost my mind. Okay, so so that's why I'm a stakeholder. I'm always an advocate for the library. I'm always pushing them to give me information. What do you need? Talking, telling them, talking to the community board about and putting it on our budget because it is so imperative and reading is so important to our communities at large, just not ours, just our communities. So I answered a lot of stuff that you probably didn't even have to ask me. Hello.
But we all needed to hear it, so thank
Yeah.
you.
You're welcome.
What was it like for you being a part of the selection committee as an artist and just being a part of this initiative?
Even I felt so blessed because there was such good stuff. I mean, and very influenced, like, oh yeah, I like that. I might try that too. But there's so many people that are so talented. And it makes you, and that's one of the reasons why I'm on the Parks, Arts and Culture Committee, is because arts is so. I really feel that people discount arts. I mean, and this was just such a great exercise about how important it is and how it brings people together, how it's a sharing of ideas, and that's what I was so enthusiastic. It was, and you know, because you oversaw the committee that I was on the selection. It could get a little not contentious, but everybody was so opinionated about this is, you know, what we think Brooklyn is, and also what we need to talk about too is the Black American culture, um, and how it's reflected, and that was and I knew that that was important to Wendy's idea, and also to connect it to the African American Heritage Center. So I felt blessed. I felt that I had a responsibility. I really was so happy, so happy that there were so many young people. That was because I was like, can we just have the young people do it? You know, and they were like, no, TJ, you can't just have young people, but we're going to try our best. But I was happy that there were a lot of young people that were so talented. There was so much talent that had so many great ideas. And it was so much fun. And I can't wait. I can't wait to see what happens next with this, because I hope that there'll be more of that, you know, more of these types of contests and encouraging of our young people, you know. Sorry for the background. I'm at home.
No worries at all.
Mhm.
Well, I think that's it. I don't know if we should just go ahead and open it up to the audience. Um,
Yeah, we can.
if anyone has any questions, you can drop them in the chat. And maybe while we wait, I could ask another question, and whoever feels compelled to chime in. I suspect Wendy may have something to say, but I wonder just what are some books, shows, songs, or even artists, writers, or creators that maybe help you feel seen, or you feel like represent or embrace Black American culture, or Wendy more specifically, you know, what are some books you would like to see us add to our collection?
Well, the last book that was recommended to me that I immediately went to see if the library had it is called Uncle Yaya, 21st Century Man of Wisdom. And I didn't see it in Brooklyn or New York collection, so thought that was the latest one. I checked some other ones out, but I can't remember the titles at this point. But
Fair.
No, noted, Wendy.
thank you.
And I want to answer. You asked a question about Sheena used to ask what books make us feel like we're seen and heard. And one author that I'm in love with, I don't really read a lot of new things. I tend to go back. But one author that I'm in love with, and her voice, a certain series of her work resonates with me, is Octavia Butler. I really, I was introduced to her, believe it, this is crazy, by Mos Def years ago. Mos Def and his partner Khalil, I can't remember Khalil's last name, but they introduced me to Octavia Butler, Wild Seed, and Push. So that which turned out to be Precious. Those two books, and because they used to own a bookstore in Brooklyn years ago, and but I fell in Octavia Butler. That woman, her mind, it's Mind of My Mind series. There's a series of hers. She's a science, they call it science fiction, but I don't know, I wouldn't, she's fantasy. But if anyone ever gets to read Octavia Butler book, other than not just Kendrick, because all people read that, read Wild Seed. I'm telling you, Wild Seed will blow your mind. That is the book to read by Octavia Butler, and everything else is everything else. But Wild Seed is, that book is, especially for Black women. That is the humdinger. You need to read that.
TJ, another question for you.
Oh,
When you're making art,
mhm.
what do you listen to music, or do
Oh
you do it in
yeah.
silence? What kind of stuff do you
No, no,
listen
no,
to?
no. When I'm
Same for you,
drawing,
Nehemiah.
okay. When I'm because I do cartoons. I like graphic stuff too. So when I'm doing graphic, um, I'm in love with Spidey Reverse. I'm in love with that soundtrack. So I listen to a lot of that, a lot of Logic, some of Jaden. I listen to that and Vince. I think it's Vince. I can't remember Vince's. There's a guy named Vince. I don't know. It's Invincible. I listen to that stuff when I'm doing my more legacy art. Uh, this is not it. This was I love land cityscapes. I don't really listen to music with cityscapes, but when I'm doing down home art that reflects my southern roots, I listen to a lot of gospel. I definitely listen to a lot of gospel, old gospel, because I'm doing a series on called Cotton, and so I listen to that because my family's from Georgia. I'm from Savannah, Georgia originally, and then my parents came here, and I was raised here, but I spent a lot of time in Savannah, Georgia, growing up. So I listen to a lot of gospel and jazz too. Sorry about the jazz also.
All sounds good.
Mhm.
How about you, Nehemiah? Do you listen to music while you're making your art?
Yes, I do. Okay, like there's two different kinds of music. Like the music you get distracted with while you're drawing, and then like the music that you can actually draw with and not be distracted. Like for me, the music I have to listen to if I don't want to be distracted is just straight instrumental music. Like I'll like look up you know I will just look up instrumental African music, West African music, or classical music. I love Monteverdi. Uh, I learned about this Italian musician in our history class, and I was like, oh, someone else to learn about. And then I was like, oh, I like him, and so I would listen to his music when I draw. But um my regular music is rock and roll, so I can't listen to rock and roll and metal music while I'm drawing because I'm not going to pay attention. I'm like, oh, I love the song, I'm into it, and I'm not, I'm not drawing. But with Miss TJ, I just wanted to say one of my first comic books was the Archie comics, and I have so many of them on my bookshelf. I just wanted to say that. I just wanted to comment. And when I was a kid, I always thought I was Veronica. Like, like they weren't, none of them were black except for the one black girl. I forgot her name. You probably know who she is because you probably know more than me. But
Chuck's
before I
girlfriend.
it was a yes, before I knew she existed and before she even existed, I just like Veronica and Jughead. He was always eating,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah.
Um, but I just wanted to connect on that. You know, because I think comic books, they you know, they connect to you, and I think that is so awesome that you and your dad were doing that. Because me and my dad, we did the same thing,
Oh, okay,
and
good.
so we both have a connection with that, and it's so cool. Yeah, Betty, I mean, Archie and Veronica. Oh, yeah, it's like a whole shipping war of Archie and Veronica and Archie and Betty, and you know. But
Yeah.
for me, my first comic book that was like they had like a black girl. Oh, I found that she was South Asian, but the way they drew her, she has the phenotype of a black girl. Was from the Babysitters Club, and the one of the characters, Claudia, she was a brown skinned girl with like pink and black hair, and being like a punk rock kid growing up, I was like, oh, that's me. And the book was about, you know, girlfriends, friendship, and I was reading all of them in my school's library, and I think that was my real connection with my library, was running to get the next, you know, comic book series of Babysitters Club, and yeah, you know, and it went from there. But yeah, Archie Comics was great too. But yeah, yeah, I just wanted to comment on that.
Thank you. Good. we connect in another way too, because your mom and I connected on another level when from back in the day. And so we're connected now. We're connected again, but that's good.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah,
I
it's
love it.
awesome. I think it's so cool that you're because you're technically like you're a whole cartoonist. You're a whole professional cartoonist. So I think that's so cool because Black women cartoonists don't really exist on a large spectrum. I mean, the first Black woman cartoonist was Jackie Ohms, and I just discovered her like I think like a year ago, and I bought a book about her, and it made me think like, well, where are the Black women who are cartoonists or in animation or or painters, and
Yeah.
so it's really good to have that dialogue and that connection.
Oh, that's something. And we featured some Black female artists. Wendy did on our Instagram. The CB3 has an Instagram page, and CB3 Pat, our committee, and we featured during wasn't it Wendy during I think it was during March, or was it during I think it was during March that I sent you some stuff
It was
for
Black History or Women's History Month, February.
right, yeah, and we featured some women um during and we there's definitely not enough of us, and we as Black people did art before the Harlem Renaissance. Okay, people, we did stuff before the Harlem Renaissance,
That's a good
and
point.
after the
That is
Harlem.
so good. That's a good point because even in
It's the
history class,
truth.
it's like Harlem. Anytime it's, I always took art history courses, especially when it came to studying art. Art history is a requirement, and it's always history that's not about Black people. Period. So
Not about it.
I remember like the first time my Italian professor brought up like the actual Black artists. I remember I remember a white student said in the background, like, "Oh, finally, Black people," and everyone started laughing because it was so obvious that it wasn't discussed.
Seriously,
You know,
it really isn't.
and so I
Yeah.
mean, the only person I can remember, Jacob Lawrence, I believe that's his name.
And everybody, and I love Jacob Lawrence, and he was.
Oh, so I said it correctly. Well, at least I said it correctly because
Jacob
I wasn't
Lawrence. Jacob Lawrence and Romy Bearden. Right? They love to talk about Romy Bearden, and
and
they're
Louis
excellent.
Malou Jones.
Yeah, but see, that's and the woman Lois. That's
Lois Malou. Yes,
right, and that's but a lot of people don't know about her, and
that's true.
she, and we've had. It's just. I could talk about that forever. It's just so frustrating.
Yeah, I would really love to talk about this with you more.
Yeah, because that's a topic we should talk about for real, as from a historical perspective, and definitely at the African American Heritage Center, because it's like our art, it begins and ends at the Harlem Renaissance, and it's like in art history books, it's like maybe one page. Maybe a page. But there's a guy I want you to pay attention to, James Porter. He has he was a professor out in Howard University, and he had the first book. It was published in the 40s on African. It was called Negro Art, I think it was called, and it's James Porter. Our chairperson is actually for CB3 is related. I want to say is related to him. But he had I did when I did a paper, I found so much information. He had extensive. He passed away maybe 2 years ago. But he's and so there's no reason for art books not to have Black mentioning of Black art, because this man did a whole book on it, and it predates it's colonial in America, colonial times, pre-colonial, that we had Black artists. Okay, I'm finished. I'm sorry, I'm done. I could go on.
You were good.
Yes, this is so good. I'm just looking at the clock and I'm like, okay, it is 8:24. So
yeah,
I think I'm gonna pass the torch back to Nicole so we can wrap up. But thank you, everybody who chimed in, and especially Nehemiah. Like, just thank you for making this all happen.
There's a question out there, though, a question to Nehemiah in the chat.
Oh yeah, there's this about would you consider a comic series based around an African American woman superhero? We have Storm, who is super but not featured enough.
I just want to say hello to Miss Connie. That's my mom's friend and co-worker. She's super amazing, and her hair is beautiful, and she got me rocking the big curls. So I love Miss Connie so much. So I'm so glad you came. So would you consider a comic series based around African? Yes, that has been an idea I've always been working on for a long time. My sketchbooks are full of characters, but I always stick with particular stories. So you would definitely see that in the future. I want to definitely push this particular superhero girl out there, and she is Black, and it'll be centered around family less than like the actual powers, kind of like The Walking Dead. Like, it's not about the apocalypse, it's about the people and their relationships, and you know, the culture of humanity. That's what I want to do with my own Black woman superhero amazing person. But yes, comic or animation of it, yeah, I would love to see it.
Me too.
That was great. Sheena, thank you so much for facilitating such a great conversation. The dialogue was amazing. Thank you, Wendy. Thank you, TJ. Thank you, Jande. I really appreciate it. So thank you, Sheena. I have to say, I feel inspired. I am absolutely 100% inspired by this conversation. I am inspired by the magnificent, awesome, intelligent, wonderful, beautiful women that have poured into all of us today. So I wanted to say thank you, thank you, thank you. I would be remiss if I did not, and she's probably gonna kill me. I did not bring up Lamine Isaac, who is I when I say the I have to. Let me find you in my gallery, Lamine. Get ready, honey. I have to say, Lamine, thank you. Thank you for being the light. Thank you for guiding me through this process. Thank you for being the ear to Community Board 3 before me coming on to Maycon. So I really had to take a moment to thank you and say I appreciate you and the work you have done to help me do this and Community Board 3. I really appreciate you, Jayande. Thank you all. This was such an amazing, amazing, amazing conversation. So I wanted to thank everyone. But I had to bring you up here, Lamine. I had to. And I appreciate everyone for joining in. I see some of our staff members. Donette, thank you for coming with us tonight. Tanasha, thank you for joining to support your baby girl always. So I just wanted to thank you all. Thank you for spending the evening with us. Thank you for the just the time. And to all of our wonderful speakers, I appreciate you. This is just the beginning of the conversation. This is nowhere near the end. In the fall, we're trying to put together something for the 12 finalists and possibly have Jay facilitate that type of conversation around the artwork and the finalists. But I just wanted to take the opportunity to say thank you for spending the evening with us. This was such a great conversation. I feel inspired, and I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful night. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for everyone. Thank you to everyone who came. I'm so appreciative. So thank you. And the questions, those are good questions. So thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. So I'm grateful for all of us being here.
Me too. It was good, Jan. Dan, you make us proud. The introvert that you are not.
I hope you have a great night. You're welcome, Tanasha. I see your message. You're welcome. It's my pleasure. Have a great night, everyone.
Nice. Thank you.